Right, this is a very important conversation that we're about to tackle now, and that, of course, all about South Africa's water systems. Peter, if I can begin with you. We obviously look at some of the major factors, and I think it's important from the South African perspective that we look at what the key factors that are contributing to South Africa's water infrastructure challenges are.
Yeah, thank you, and wonderful to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. Just a quick introduction to our organization, the NEPAD Business Foundation, for those of you that don't work with us already. Essentially what we're trying to do is to work with governments on their priorities by mobilizing private sector resources. We've been doing this for close on 25 years across the whole of Africa. Related to this event, there's water, there's circular economy issues, various things that we're working on. So think of us as a partnership broker, mainly with water users, with the sector, working with government on their priorities. Within that context, we host something called the Strategic Water Partners Network. It's a partnership between essentially water users and the Department of Water and Sanitation, co-chaired by the Department of Water and Sanitation, DG. And fundamentally, it's about trying to resolve the supply-demand water gap that we have in the country. It's been going for a number of years now, just over a decade, with some great results. Many of you will be familiar with the No Drop program. The results come out of municipalities now. That was a product of SWPN working with the department, as well as other areas of the mining sector, the agricultural sector. What we're seeing, obviously, is we've been heavily involved in water stewardship at a company level, but as things escalate, people are looking to us more and more to provide leadership in this space and move far more into the municipal and national infrastructure. So this is a great opportunity just to share our insights with you and what's going on. So to answer your question, there's a couple of key points that I think people need to understand. The first is that the water sector is made up of national infrastructure, managed, owned, run by the Department of Water, as well as local infrastructure, which is the mandate of water utilities, water boards, and local municipalities. Complexity in terms of institutions already. It's made up of a system of local catchments. People seem to know the energy sector quite well. We don't have a national grid. We have a series of local grids in the water sector. These are the catchment areas. Importantly, like the power sector, it's self-financing. It relies on water users paying for the water to fund the municipal as well as the national infrastructure. And I think perhaps, and by far the most important, is it can't be generated. So we can't put a generator up, we can't put a solar PV. We have what we've got, and we've got to manage what we've got. So that's the sort of initial context. Where are we now? If you look at the national water balance, so this is now looking at what water do we have versus what do we use, and this is where the No Drop program came in. Across the country, we're averaging above 40% of water losses. So 40% of what we use is lost through inefficiencies, and it's getting worse. So there's a steady trend over the last 10 years of that getting worse. Other context, if you look at the report published by the South African Institution of Civil Engineers, they published an infrastructure report scorecard. The water infrastructure score is from C+ to D-. I forget exactly what the gradings mean, but it's from acceptable to high risk across the board, from national infrastructure through to local municipal infrastructure. So what does all of this mean? It means that water is a national priority, but it needs to be implemented at a local level. You all know the social economic implications are severe. Water scarcity is real, and we need to act immediately. Municipal service delivery is at the core of this as a solution, but we do need to have a much better holistic approach to understand the state of the entire system. We've been caught out in Gauteng now, as we all know, with what's happening at Lesotho Highlands and the late delivery. We need to know what's happening in all of the water systems. I think that transparency is critical for all of us as water users. And then finally, just to reinforce that there's no alternative to generation. This water scarcity is real, so we need to have a series of medium to long-term policy shifts. The big ticket items in the power space, it was the IPP program, it was lifting the generation license, In the water space, it's slightly different. It's around the licensing. It's about metro reforms program. We need to do that. We need to support the Water Partnerships Office in their mandate to create PPPs, but recognize that that's going to take time.
Yeah.
That's a 3 to 5 year game, and we need to act now, utilizing local water user partnerships to support our local municipalities to drive change and get some immediate quick wins.
Yeah. Thank you, Peter. I mean, giving us some very key points there, but perhaps I jumped the gun because you were sort of speaking, but I want to bring Jay, if you don't mind, into this conversation now, because Jay, we don't necessarily know how bad the situation actually is, because we are worried, and that goes without say. I mean, we can see this, we can see the problems, and like what Peter was saying, that there's no such thing as putting solar on our roof and suddenly water is going to appear. It's not going to appear. This is something that we got to work with what we have, and the problem is we are seeing major issues. How bad is the situation when it comes to the water in South Africa and the scarcity and the problems associated with it?
So Deanna, can you all hear me? Is it okay? So I think you've got to separate the water resource from the infrastructure.
Okay.
And I think that's the first thing we confuse. When the infrastructure doesn't work, we think it's a scarcity issue. We are scarce. We have always been scarce. We have been managing scarcity in South Africa for the last 100 years. The equation is changing, and we'll continue to manage that scarcity. That's our reality. Water is finite. We're a water-scarce country. So managing the water strategically from a resource side is very, very key. And I think at the moment, we have a fairly good handle on the resource aspect. We have sufficient infrastructure and dams, but we've reached the limits on what we can exploit from a surface perspective. Okay. On the infrastructure side, I think Peter's captured. I mean, you can measure, the health of a system when you have 50% leaks. Okay, when half the water is not getting to you. So that is an infrastructure. It's a governance. It's an operation issue, etc. That needs a significant intervention, more from a capacity, from a skilling, from a financing aspect, etc. It's about getting water to you with higher assurance. Now, just move back to the resource side. I think we come from a long history, and we live in a world of entitlement because we switch the tap on and we think, fine, the water is there. But that entitlement from assurance is becoming more and more difficult. So the diversification of water is very key for us. I mean, I put a challenge to many of the bottling companies, etc. When are we going to get our first recycled beer or Coca-Cola or etc. to change the paradigm around reuse? For example, in the domestic water environment, we only recycle 4% of all the water. We call it wasted water. Nowadays, we don't call it wastewater. So there's this big opportunity, in terms of reuse and recycling, kind of changing the equation, adding to greater security into the future. So there are a lot of options that we need to start tackling, and both as individuals, as industry, we have to come to the game, to help government, help the sector move in this direction to build this new future around water security through a new strategy that starts diversifying. So it means that stormwater is a resource. It's not there to flush out to the sea. Wasted water that is effluent is a resource. How do we harvest and capture all of it? Grey water at a household level is a resource, etc. If we can move in that direction, I think we can push the 2030 scenario, back somewhere like about 2080, because now we kind of found a way to balance our needs But again, fixing the infrastructure is going to bring a lot more sustainability into the system. So we are in the direction. Cape Town has kind of started leading from the front around through its water strategy. Last week we had a great water reuse conference that confirmed that and puts us in the map. We have to use innovation. I think we not very good of harnessing and using innovation and local innovations. We were in the forefront of water reuse for the last 50 years, but we've never turned it into an industrial opportunity while fixing our own problems. So we got to see this in a new way, that where we have a challenge around water security, we should turn it into an industrial opportunity as well, because that will accelerate what we do more significantly.
Yeah. Elinda, I'm going to come to you in a short while, because that's where we come into the industrial opportunities, which is important. But I think the infrastructure challenges is where I want to sit for a little bit. And Billy, I think you're the man to talk about this, because, it really worries me about the infrastructure. I mean, I just speak from driving around in the area that I live. One day you see this massive sprout, then the next day the road is closed, then this pipe bursts, then you patch that one, and then another one explodes, and then another 5 explode, and then it's like you're out water without 2 weeks, and it just gets worse and worse and worse and compounded. It's like we're putting a plaster over something that actually needs a complete overhaul. How bad is the infrastructure and the challenge that's facing us right now?
So Leanne, both is this on? Yes.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
So both Peter and Jay have alluded to this, the infrastructure issue, and you mentioned yourself now. I think historically we've relied on very large centralized systems to provide what we need in terms of water services. And as a result of that, the sort of enabling infrastructure around us also started suffering. And when those systems go offline for maintenance, or they collapse because of poor maintenance, ultimately what happens is you start seeing those burst pipes. There's just too much in the system, it cannot handle it, and more infrastructure starts collapsing as a result of that. I've always sort of held the view that I think we need to start moving to a more decentralized scenario. We need to start providing services close to the point of use, and providing in such a way that when there is enabling infrastructure issues, those are quicker and easier to repair, as opposed to trying to turn off an entire grid to maintain something, or trying to lock it out to maintain something. You can kind of de-risk yourself from that perspective. It is not going to be easy just replacing all the pipelines, not going to be easy replacing pump stations. It's going to take a lot of time. So quicker wins is to try and move closer to where the water is needed and isolate where that water is being sent to, rather than just this main centralized units that we are historically used to.
Yeah. And how much water are we as a country losing due to these infrastructure challenges?
Sorry?
How much water are we actually losing due to these infrastructural challenges?
Peter mentioned that it's close to 40% of network losses. That could be a result of multiple things. Predominantly, the pipelines are just not there to support the amount of water going through and the amount of water demand. So that's just 40% of network losses. As a result of that, there's this term non-revenue water, but non-revenue water doesn't just apply to people who aren't paying for water. It applies to water that is being treated, a cost being associated to it, and it's also being lost along the line. So costs are being put into this, and along the whole value chain of delivering the water to the end user, there is a great cost. And I think it's probably bigger than 40% in terms of what we're actually losing. And yes, Cape Town is at the forefront of developing this, and in fact, mentioning that the industrial users have come to the party in terms of trying to secure their own water. But there's a lot more that needs to be done than just that.
It certainly does. So, Linda, I think that's a brilliant point to bring you as a company into it, because, industries can help in, I suppose, helping to fund water infrastructure, but also looking for ways that you can become self-sustainable in what you do. What do you do as a company?
So, Leanne, as a business, I don't know if you know this, but 95% of beer is water.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely
And that's why it's
critical.
so healthy. And that is why beer is healthy. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
So apart from energy, is water our second most valuable resource to brew beer. And I know we've got an infrastructure problem, but as HEINEKEN, we ask ourselves, what's happening inside our gates? What do we have control over? What can we change as a company to drive down our water consumption? You've seen about our Brew a Better World in aspirations. At the moment, we sit at about 3 liters of water to produce 1 liter of beer. For 2030, our aspiration is to take that down to 2.6 liters per liter of beer produced. And the technologies that we are looking at and in the environment that we are working in, it's going back to basics. Do we have our leaks under control? Are we reporting leaks? Are we fixing it? Are we managing the water that we're using? Are we measuring the water? As you know, we cannot manage what we cannot measure. And then going back to simple things in our processes, are we using the least amount of water? Is it optimized? Then secondly, reusing that water. In which processes can we reuse that water? Taking rinser water, taking it to pasteurizers, whatever might be the case. And then as a last resort, our effluent, which I now learn is not wastewater, it's wasted water. All of our sites have big treatment facilities where we recover that water and put it back into our facility and reduce our reliance on the municipal infrastructure. So I think the part that we as a business play is how do we reduce our reliance on the municipal infrastructure and reduce the stress on that.
Yeah, at least. At least. I had no idea that it took that much to make a liter of beer. I mean, it's so eye-opening. Jay, I'll come back to you quickly. Municipalities, you mentioned municipalities, local communities. How can they be empowered to take a more active role in all of this water conservation and water protection?
Well, in the diversification, there's several behavior change elements that needs to kick in. Because like I said, that we're too used to 24/7, and that's okay. But I think we need to connect with water, connect with the value of water. Because, we live in a very vulnerable situation. And it can change very, very quickly. I'll give you some examples. People talk climate change. I talk extreme events. Okay? If you look at Durban, in the last 5 years, they had 3 significant floods. In the 100-year history, that never happened. Is that going to be the future pattern? That's one example. Take Cape Town, before day 0, they had 4 years of very dry periods, okay, in a span of about 7 years. That didn't happen in 100 years. So the climate, or you call the environment, is changing. Our connection with water, our planning, our management needs to also start changing. And that means that at a household level, at a local level, we should become part of the solution in starting to build more resilience around how we manage water. So, at the Water Research Commission, we've taken some disruptive pathways around trying to invent a toilet that doesn't need to flush.
Yeah.
It's quite radical. We're getting there. If we don't flush, we don't have wasted water. We have lots of opportunities, and we can reduce the household footprint, for example, in terms of consumption down to 50 liters from what we're using at the moment of 170, because we don't need sewers, we don't need big infrastructure. So that's kind of a radical way of looking at it. But at the moment, even at a household level, people can start, building resilience to reuse in terms of grey water, separating systems, harvesting water, harvesting stormwater. And all those elements contribute. And like you said, it's called decentralization, right at that level, and you can get it at different scales. But I don't think we, in the future, will see the luxury of having big centralized systems giving you 110% assurance of supply.
Yeah.
I mean, we're suffering at the moment because of that, because when you have the cocktail of problems where you have aging infrastructure, you have poor governance, you have lack of capacity and skills, then you are looking at a serious situation. And we have to acknowledge that that is where we are. But we can work our way out of it. We're not the only country. I mean, even places like USA have it worse than us. But at least we're doing something about it.
Yeah. I never thought I'd feel sorry for the USA. I really didn't. It was like a time where you think and say, you take the spotlight for a while, please. We'll sort our issues out. You just keep the spot and stop saying our name. Just stop saying our name. Let me ask you, Billy, as we sort of, I'm going to start coming to everybody to kind of round things up. But, you know, what are there out there? Some innovative water solutions, some perhaps reuse technologies that we can all look at?
There's certainly a lot of new technologies that are coming to the fore, but there's already quite a lot of established technologies that we can make use of. And a lot of them becoming quite cheaper compared to conventional systems. I think it's going to require a lot of initiative from the people using those technologies to actually embrace them, because they're not what they're used to. They're not used to building a system that would typically take several hundred square meters into tens of square meters. You know, the technology is there, and it's obviously depends on what you're looking to treat, but there are certainly ways to innovate within that space and to provide solutions that can tackle varying water qualities and various contaminations. One of the big challenges I think we're also facing with this, and why the adoption of new technology is so important, is because these big systems, which Jay says we won't have the luxury of in the future, they are very rigid. They're designed for a very limited window of treatment. And if their water quality changes, as it is, industrial pollution, residential pollution, all these things, the wasted waters that go into the system, these plants can't handle it anymore. You need something that can have a very quick turnaround, augmentation, additional strategies, and very quickly address whatever the evolving problem is. If we don't look at it like that, we are going to have systems that will provide water, but definitely not within any safe levels, because they're just not able to do so. And there's only so much chlorine you can throw at a problem anyway. So.
Absolutely. Peter, can I get you to comment a bit on this as well? Because I think it's a very important issue in terms of things out there that we can start doing.
Yeah, so on the technology side specifically, I mean, I have the same view. I think there's enough technologies out there already. It's the deployment of the technology, it's the project preparation, planning, procurement that needs to unleash these technologies. It's new specifications that haven't been updated at municipal level. So I don't necessarily think it's a tech play. Maybe just to dive forward a little bit, I mean, what needs to be done? I think first and foremost, companies need to acknowledge that this is a real thing. We need to take water to an executive level. You know, historically, water's been cheap and it's been available. So it hasn't really been on the table of the executives that are planning around it. We need to get at that level where we understand the implications, both to society but also to business disruption and what that means. And then, you know, again, what we're seeing is that companies are doing a lot. We've heard from HEINEKEN, what they do within their factory fence. It's become increasingly expensive to do more within the factory fence. So there's a shift towards looking outside of the factory fence, saying, how can I support outside of my factory fence for benefit for myself, but importantly for the entire community that I serve, that works with me, that is embedded around us. And it's this concept of user associations that we're seeing more and more starting to happen. We understand it well in the agricultural space, irrigation schemes and the like, where there's a shared interest in the volume, supply, quality, reliability of the water. We need to develop the same sort of relationship in our municipalities, working with our big water users to make sure that there's this consistency and accountability.
Yeah. Elinda, I'm going to come to you. I can see our time is coming up as well. Perhaps you want to just, give us a wrap-up from the HEINEKEN perspective, from the business perspective, just in terms of these water issues that we've been talking about now.
Like I said, we as HEINEKEN working very hard in our factories to reduce water. As HEINEKEN Beverages, we are fairly new. only established about a year and a half to 2 years ago, but luckily we have our big brother in Amsterdam looking out for us. So a lot of information and work has been done. We've got 170 facilities all over the world where we can get best practices, share the knowledge. What can we do further in our own production facilities to reduce our water consumption further? And then I think we also acknowledge that we are not experts in all of the fields. Our core business is producing beverages, so we do partner and that extensively with water companies to help and assist us to make sure that we produce effluent that's within specification and that our whole system is compliant.
Okay. Jay, final parting shot from you?
Yeah, look, I'm quite optimistic. I think we have the pool of competency and skills in South Africa. We need enabling policy and signals that gets everyone together and their hands dirty in solving this problem. I like you said, I see a big shift from the industry, but we need to go beyond the industry fence. We live in a world where we work with allocations, and the more efficient we become, the more water we free up for economic development and prosperity. So I also see a very big circular element in water.
Yeah.
Okay, that can be a catalyst, and I don't like sometimes taking the example of Singapore because they've made a business out of water security, and I think we should also think like that and use it as a mechanism that the limiting factor is energy in many of the things we're doing, but I think we're solving those aspects, and we might be able then to have a very secure future around water. Yeah. Of course, I can't guarantee the governance side. Those things we have to work on. But that's, like I said, pushing government, to ensure that they deliver services adequately in terms of the Constitution and holding them accountable. We haven't held them accountable. No one's gone to jail. So industry, users, etc., must use their power of the Constitution to make it happen.
Yeah. Accountability, big issue that seems to be missing here. Billy, final word from you?
Very brief. I agree with Joe. We actually have the skills here to solve our problems. I like what you said earlier on when you mentioned these are not necessarily African problems, but we have African solutions. And I try and leave this room with a thought. Since about 2006-07, there is South African design solutions being used in Singapore to produce almost half of their drinking water on a daily basis. And there's been many a fact-finding mission to go and see how Singaporeans, our first world country, solves their problems when these are actually African solutions. There are companies in Africa, in South Africa, who are solving those problems on a global scale. And we can do it. We just need someone to step up and say, let's actually start the process. Let's really engage.
Absolutely. Love that. That's amazing. I'd love to know more about that. But we'll do that at another time. Peter, close from you?
I think I already closed really in many ways, but I think there's the opportunity for all of us to work together as companies.
Yeah.
But understanding that it's always going to be in a very local context.
Yeah.
We understand that everybody has an operation, they have work in their own area. We need to find the partners that have that same vision, that same interest, and work together.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't have that interest in mind, then I suppose you haven't really got an interest in surviving the end of this world without water. Elinda, finally, on your side, anything?
No, I think my colleagues have said that we have to work together and find the opportunities.
Okay.
And there are lots of them.
They certainly are. And remember, 95% of beer is water. I don't know why that's all I've taken from this discussion. I think it means we need to take a break. Okay, I need to restart my brain along with all of you. And thank you to my panelists. Thank you very, very much for talking about such an important issue. We're going to take a 15-minute break. That's it, 15 minutes, please, everybody. I need you back in here so that we can begin again at about 5 past 12 or so. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Well done. Well done. Thank you.